This is the Cathedral Square, right in the Sacred Heart of Glasgow, next to the cathedral. And in ancient times, it's recorded in books that there was so much water welling out of the ground here that you could dig practically anywhere to get a water supply. And there are quite a number of wells around here. So here's the cathedral behind me. There's also one just outside the new St Mungo's Museum, which is dated as a 16th century well. It's called the Bishop's Well. Thomas Lugton, in his book from 1901 called The Old Lodgings of Glasgow, says that before the introduction of Christianity, the modern Cathedral Square and offshoots seems to have been a place of stone circles and pillar stones, the pagan marks of tomb and well worship. On a knoll near the corner of Stirling Road and Castle Street stood the pillar stones described in the records as the 12 Brother Crosses. And in the heart of the old township in Cathedral Square, a flowing spring poured its waters into a long, wide ditch, generally mentioned in the records as a stank or water ditch, and less frequently as the girth or sanctuary burn. But behind the cathedral, of course, is the necropolis, which is what we're really interested in. Just walking down the side of the cathedral now, you can see it behind me, and this is the road down to the Bridge of Sighs, which goes up to the necropolis. Necropolis really was only inaugurated as a burial ground in the late 19th century by the guilds merchants of Glasgow. Before that, it was just a wooded knoll called the Fir Park. Hugh Mackintosh, in his Origin and History of Glasgow Streets, which came out in 1902, writes that the Fir Park and the banks of the Molendenor River, as well as a considerable expanse of the surrounding countryside, were at one time covered with a shadowy tract of forest, and in ancient times, anterior to our ecclesiastical history, a druidical place of worship stood on the site of the present necropolis. This building here at the end was actually designed as an ossuary for storing bones. I don't think it was ever used as that though. So it's mainly just a storehouse now for gardening tools and gardening equipment. So you can see the cathedral behind me here across the road. And just in that corner nearest to us is where St Mungo's Well is. So if you're ever there, go and visit the crypt and look right in the far corner and you'll find St Mungo's Well built into the fabric of the building. Now it's interesting to mention here that when they were doing some installation of new heating ducts in the cathedral, they actually excavated most of the floor in the lower church, and they didn't find any artefacts or remnants of St Mungo at all, even though that's where his tomb is. There's no record of his body being there, so nobody knows where it is. Okay, so here we are on the top of the necropolis, and behind me over here you can just see the John Knox statue sat up on his pedestal glaring down over the city that he converted to Protestantism back in the Reformation. Now it's interesting up here that is really the highest point of the hill. However, that's not where the main centre is. The main centre is where I'm standing, and when I was plotting out Harry Bell's lines on Google Earth, this was the site I had to pick to get them all to converge. I could get some to go through the highest point, but most of them seem to converge lower down on the shoulder of the hill here, which would be, I guess, the most logical point where the settlement would be, because it's the sort of flattest area on top of the hill. Here we are looking southeast, and just to the right of that big chimney, right in the distance behind Parkhead Stadium there, you can see Tinto Hill, a very prominent hill from Glasgow. It's about 40 miles away. And that is the direction of the winter solstice sunrise. And Tinto, of course, is known as Beacon Hill, and there is a Neolithic cairn on the top of red stones. Tinto also means red as well, so that's probably why it got its name. But you can just imagine people up there waiting to watch the winter solstice sunrise and setting a beacon off when they could see the sun coming over the horizon, just to warn the people back here to get ready to look at it and record it. I always have this vision of people up at the Cocknow Stone, which is just off this alignment, watching for that same beacon so they could get ready to carve their cup and ring marks into the rock. Moving around slightly more to the south, just looking over here, You can maybe just see through behind this branch of the tree on the right here, you can see a wind turbine on the skyline. So that marks the site of Cathkin Braes, which is where Queen Mary watched the Battle of Langside from. This rather fine edifice in front of us was one of the earliest monuments to be built. This is the Menteith Mausoleum. There's quite a remarkable echo inside. Unfortunately, it's cordoned off at the moment. I did have the pleasure of working on some lighting of that many years ago, but none of it's working now. It's all been either vandalised or just stopped working. But it looks like it's in need of some care and attention. But it's a rather nice mausoleum. So I'm going to Dow's. I'm looking for the centre where most of the alignments on the network cross over here. And here we are, getting a reaction here. And from here I can see Tinto Hill, I can see Cathkin Braes, I can see over towards Dun Chattan in the south. And if the buildings weren't here, I would see much more to the north. But anyway. Now from up at the top of the hill you do get a better view of the horizon, and you can see Tinto Hill sitting way on the skyline there just behind Celtic Park. And coming round, here we are coming round towards Cathkin Braes, and if I jig up a little bit here, so just in the middle distance there you can see the hump-treed skyline of Camp Hill, which is the Queen's Park and the earthwork. And you might just about be able to make out the flagpole in the centre of that, which from here is just to the left of the ringwork. And over here on the skyline, this is Neilston Pad, which is a very prominent landmark from the north of the city. And yet Harry doesn't mention it at all, which I find quite interesting, because this really does stick out when you're in the north of the city, just looking southwards. And it may be due to the fact that Harry lived in East Kilbride, so he tended to be always looking north and not looking south. I don't know, it might be something to do with it. And still moving around past the cranes here, just to the left of that Fleece Tower on the Barony Church is Walls Hill Fort. Harry makes rather a lot of this, but I've not really thought it was that significant to me. Doesn't seem to be that many alignments coming from it. And just in the distance there, over the top of the Royal Infirmary, you can just see Dumgoyne, a prominent volcanic plug at the end of the Campsies. So I've stopped here just at the bottom of the hill. This is Wishart Street, which is just outside the bottom entrance to the necropolis. And underneath here is the route of the Molendoner Burn, or the Molendoner River. Behind me you can see the Bridge of Sighs. It's the route across to the necropolis. And that used to be dammed just underneath that, so there was a large pool just beyond there, where it said the bishops of Glasgow would sail down the Molendoner in their barges to come into the cathedral. And just on this side of the road there was a mill laid running down the side of the hill here, and there was a little mill just about where I'm standing. so you can get your grain ground at a suitable price. I'm sure I'm sure there's a good tithe went to the cathedral. So yeah, sadly the Molendener is no longer seen in most places of Glasgow. It's right under this street here. This little street I'm walking down is Ladywell Street, which was one of the most important routes that came in through the town. Came up from the Drygate, so from the southeast this was the main road to get up to the top of the hill, which is where the cathedral and all the action happened. But now sadly it's just a little cul-de-sac dead end at the back of the brewery. The brewery have completely taken over the entire road, as you can see. And it's all a bit neglected. However, there is a site of interest right down at the end here. So this is the Ladywell, or what remains of the Ladywell. It's been capped for a rather long time now. This is one of the oldest wells in Glasgow, and in fact it was the last one to be capped after the public water supply from Dun Chattan was brought in. It's an artesian spring that's noted on early maps, and used to lay just outside the city wall and Drygate Port in medieval times. Will certainly have refreshed Roman troops on their way up to the Antonine Wall. In fact, there is some evidence suggesting that this was actually used as part of a Roman road and was a Roman camp at the top of the hill where Cathedral Square is now. This was still in public use while most other wells were closed after the fresh water from Loch Catrin was piped in and transformed the city's health and sanitation in the 1860s. The Ladywell was the last public well to be closed, and a plaque commemorating the well's most recent refurbishment in 1983 by tenant Caledonian Breweries. Now, if you're being cynical, you would think that this is because they are stealing the water supply. Tenants, however, says that it does not get its water from the Ladywell, but that it's piped in from Wester Craigs. But Wester Craigs is just another name for the Necropolis, which is right at the back here. Yeah, so just think of a couple of hundred years of dead bodies filtering down into the ground. What's that doing to your water supply? Now, just think of that next time you have your pint of Tennent's lager. Now, I'm making a joke about this, but cemetery leachate, as it is called, is a definite problem in some places. The average 70 kilogram human body will release about 13 kilograms of corpse leachate. And this comprises fluids, heavy metals and other toxins including arsenic, lead, formaldehyde, potassium nitrate and chromium if the body has been embalmed. And a 2021 US environmental study estimated that neighbourhoods within a radius of up to 500 metres from a cemetery are at elevated risk of heavy metal exposure. So want to drink that beer? Cheers! Now, this rather unprepossessing street is Barrack Street. And I'm only mentioning it because in this little triangle across the road here, this little gushet if you like, in 1962 some excavations uncovered a hoard of oyster shells, which gave rise to the idea that this was a settlement site in Mesolithic times. Nothing to mark it now. We've got the Ladywell pub just on the corner here. It was at the Tenant Caledonian Well Park Brewery. But Harry thought that this site was interesting because there's not many Mesolithic sites in the secret geometry, and an alignment through here can be traced from the Cocknell Stone to Tinto Hill. It's one of the few sites that's actually on that alignment because it's slightly off the one running through the Necropolis to Tinto Hill. So that's why Harry included this site. This is called Barrack Street because there was obviously a barracks here at one point, and that was after the 1745 rebellion and the Battle of Culloden and all that. The British Army founded this barracks up here to keep the Highlanders in their place, and this is one of many barracks. But there's not much to show for it now. It's just a few garages and all sort of semi-derelict industrial sites. So that's Barrack Street. Anyway, that's all I have in this video. So I hope you've enjoyed watching that. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell if you want notified of any new videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.